A metal reflex hammer, one of those standard issue Tromner ones with the weighted head. It hit the linoleum floor in room 4 of the Northside Chicago ER at exactly 2:14 p.m. It didn't bounce. It just landed with this flat, heavy thud that sounded louder than it should have because, for a second, the room went completely quiet. The medical record for Daniel is thick. It's dense with high-resolution scans and lab values that don't make sense. But none of those papers mention the hammer. They don't mention the way the sound seemed to hang in the air long after the metal stopped moving. We've looked at the reports from the staff who were in the room. They describe a physician who simply stopped. Not a collapse at first, just a 33-year-old man who looked like he'd suddenly forgotten how to be a person. Daniel didn't start his account with the hospital. When he sat down to write this out, he didn't start with the blood or the scans or the sound of that hammer. He started with the ocean. The ground wasn't just shaking. It was liquid. That's the only word that works. I was standing, or hovering, I don't know, above the Oregon coast, and the earth was rippling like a rug someone was shaking out. I watched a highway, Route 101, just unzip. The asphalt didn't crack, it peeled back. And the sound, it wasn't a roar. Everyone thinks it's a roar. It was a hum, a low vibrating hum that I felt in my molars. It felt like the frequency was trying to shake the fillings out of my teeth. I looked out at the Pacific and the water was gone. Not just pulled back, it looked like the ocean had been sucked into a drain. Hundreds of feet of wet sand and flopping fish and boat hulls just sitting there in the gray light. I remember thinking clearly, like I was back in a lecture hall, that this shouldn't be possible. The displacement volume was wrong. The physics were broken. Then the hum stopped, and for 1 second there was nothing. No wind, no gulls, just the silence. Then it came back. A wall of black water that didn't look like a wave. It looked like the horizon was standing up. Look, I know how this sounds. I'm 33. I've spent the last decade in the most high-pressure medical environments in Chicago. I don't do visions. I don't do messages. I'm the guy who looks at the CT scan and tells you which artery is leaking. I'm a man of evidence. Or I was. 10 days ago, I was in the ER. It was a Tuesday, just a normal, grinding Chicago Tuesday. Gray sky, wet streets. I was in room 4 with a guy who'd come in with some vague numbness in his left arm. I was holding my reflex hammer, reaching for his elbow. Then the thunderclap hit. In neurology, we call it a thunderclap headache. It's the classic sign of a subarachnoid hemorrhage. It feels like someone took a sledgehammer to the base of your skull. I felt my vision split. 2 worlds. The patient's startled face and this blinding white-hot heat behind my eyes. I heard the hammer hit the floor, my knees hit next. I didn't feel the pain, I just felt the coldness of the floor through my scrubs. I tried to say, "Code blue." I knew what was happening to me. My brain was filling with blood. I could feel the pressure. It's a very specific sensation, a fullness, like your head is a balloon being overinflated. I saw the patient stand up. I saw the nurse, Sarah, run toward me. Her mouth was moving, but the sound was wrong. It was slowed down, deep, like a record playing at half speed. Then the room wasn't there anymore. It wasn't like falling asleep. I've been under for surgery before. That's just a gap. This was a transition. It was like walking out of a loud, bright room into a hallway that felt alive. It was dark, but it wasn't empty. I could feel movement. I felt like I was being pulled at a velocity that should have torn my skin off, but I didn't have skin. I was just awareness. I thought, this is the DMT dump. I'd read the studies. When the brain dies, the pineal gland supposedly releases a massive hit of dimethyltryptamine. I told myself, Daniel, you're just hallucinating your own death. Stay clinical, watch the patterns. But the patterns didn't stay patterns. The light didn't come from a point. It didn't have a source. It was just there. It was thick. It had weight. It felt like walking into a warm ocean, only the ocean was made of light, and it knew me. That's the part I struggle with, the knowing. I'm a doctor. I see bodies as machines, very complex, very beautiful machines, but machines. But in that space, I wasn't a machine. I was a sun. I didn't see a face at first. I just felt the presence. It moved toward me, and I felt my shoulders drop. I didn't even know I'd been holding them that high for the last 10 years. The stress of the residency, the deaths I couldn't stop, the divorce, it all just leaked out of me. Then he took my hand. I didn't look at his wounds. I didn't look at his hair. I looked at his eyes. If you've ever looked at a star through a high-powered telescope and felt that weird shiver of how small you are, that was it, but he wasn't far away. He was right there. He didn't say, "Hello, Daniel." He didn't use words like we do. It was more like a download, a total transfer of thought. I looked down at my own hands, or what I thought were my hands, and I started to shake. I'm not a crier. I haven't cried since my grandfather died when I was 12, but my face was wet. I could feel the heat of the tears. I tried to apologize. I started listing things. Every patient I'd been too tired to care about. Every time I'd been arrogant with the staff. I wanted to explain my skepticism. I wanted to tell him why I didn't believe. He didn't let me finish. He just squeezed my hand. It was a physical grip, solid, real. "I know," he said. That was it. 2 words. But they weren't just sound, they were an erasure. Everything I'd been carrying, all that medical logic I used to shield myself from the world, it just didn't matter. Then he showed me the map. It wasn't a paper map, it was the country. It was America, but I was seeing it from somewhere high up, and I saw the colors. New York, Florida, California. They started to pulse. It was this deep, bruised red, like a hematoma, like blood pooling under the skin after a trauma. I looked at New York first. I could see the streets, I could see the subway entrances. It was May. I don't know how I knew it was May, but I could feel the temperature. It was that crisp, early spring air that smells like wet pavement and hope. But the people weren't hopeful. I saw a man sitting on a bench in Central Park. He was leaning forward, his head between his knees. He was trying to breathe. He was doing that tripod position we see in the ER when someone is in severe respiratory distress. His skin was a grayish blue. Cyanosis. I wanted to reach down. I wanted to tell him to get to an ICU. But then I saw the woman on the sidewalk 3 blocks away. She was doing the same thing. And the teenager at the bus stop. It was everywhere. I'm an ER doc. I've seen outbreaks. I've seen flu seasons that break the system. But this was different. I watched the hospitals. I saw the doors. I saw my colleagues, people I recognized from conferences, wearing full PPE, but their eyes, they were hollow. They looked like they were working in a war zone. I saw the lines. People weren't just waiting in the ER. They were wrapped around the building. Some were sitting on the curb. Some were just lying on the grass. "What is this?" I asked. I didn't say it out loud. I just thought it. I looked at the symptoms. I was trying to diagnose it. Was it viral? Was it a toxin? I saw the way their chests were moving. It wasn't just a cough. It was like their lungs had turned to concrete. They were fighting for every milliliter of air. Then the vision shifted to Florida. The heat was there, the humidity, but the red pulse was stronger. I saw a nursing home. I can't tell you the name, but I saw the hallway. It was quiet. Too quiet. I saw an aide, a young woman with her hair in a messy bun, sitting on the floor in the middle of the hall. She was just staring at the wall. She wasn't working. She wasn't moving. She had just stopped. I looked into the rooms. It was the same thing I saw in New York, but it was faster. The elderly were just fading. It wasn't a struggle. They were just letting go. I felt this pressure in my own chest. I tried to take a deep breath, but I couldn't. I was back in that space with him, but I was feeling the air in Florida. It was heavy. It felt like trying to breathe through a wet towel. "Why are you showing me this?" I reached for his arm. I wanted to turn away. He didn't move. He just kept looking at the map. I looked at California next. Los Angeles, San Francisco. I saw the traffic. Thousands of cars. But they weren't moving. People had just abandoned them. I saw a man walking down the middle of the 405. He had a backpack and a mask, but he was stumbling. I saw the smoke. It wasn't from the fires yet. This was different. This was the city itself feeling stagnant. The red color was everywhere now. Those 3 states were glowing like a warning light on a dashboard. 2 months, he said. I felt the number hit me like a physical weight. 2 months of this. I looked at the people again. I saw a young father in a suburb of Orlando. He was standing in his kitchen holding a bottle of water. He was looking at his kids who were playing on the floor. He looked terrified. He wasn't sick yet, but he was watching the news. He was watching the world outside his window turn into something he didn't recognize. I wanted to tell him it was going to be okay. But I looked at the man standing next to me, Jesus. He wasn't looking at the sickness. He was looking at the Father. And I realized something. He wasn't showing me a medical disaster, he was showing me a moment. He was showing me what happens when the machines break. I looked back at the map. The red was spreading. It was moving inland. Slowly, but it was moving. I tried to blink. I tried to wake up. I told myself, Daniel, this is the aneurysm. You're having a seizure. Your temporal lobe is misfiring. But the man holding my hand didn't feel like a misfire. He felt more real than the floor I'd fallen on. I looked at my own hands again. They weren't shaking anymore. There's more, he said. And the map changed. The red pulse faded, and the ground started to hum again. I looked back at the Oregon coast. The highway was still unzipped. The water was still gone. I felt my heart, or whatever was in my chest, start to race. I looked at the horizon. The wall of water was closer now. It wasn't blue. It was black, and it was moving faster than anything I'd ever seen in a textbook. I tried to pull my hand away, but he held on. I realized I wasn't just watching. I was waiting. The wave didn't crash. That's the thing that messed with my head. In movies, there's this big white water spray and a dramatic roar. This was just mass, a solid, vertical wall of black-gray water that didn't have a crest. It just reached the beach and kept going. I watched it hit a town on the Oregon coast, one of those places with the cedar-shingled houses and the little galleries. The water didn't knock the houses over, it just picked them up. I saw a whole row of buildings lift off their foundations and become part of the water. They were floating, spinning, being ground into splinters by the cars and trees that the wave was already carrying. I looked at my hands, or I tried to. I couldn't find them. I was just a pair of eyes floating in the cold air. This is cerebral hypoxia, I told myself. I actually said it. Daniel, your neurons are firing off their last reserves. This is a dream caused by the blood in your ventricles. Jesus didn't look at me like I was crazy. He just tightened his grip on my arm. Watch, he said. I looked toward Washington. The Puget Sound was a mess. The water was pushing into the inlets, moving up towards Seattle, but it was the low-lying areas that were getting gutted. I saw warehouses in Tacoma just vanish. One second they were there, big gray boxes on the pier, and the next, there was just churn. I'm a doctor. I've seen what water does to a body. Drowning is quiet. It's not like the movies. But this wasn't just drowning, it was trauma. I saw the debris, boards with nails, chunks of concrete, rebar. The water was a slurry of everything we'd built, and it was moving at 60 miles an hour. I thought about the triage. How do you even start a triage on a whole coastline? You don't. You can't. I saw a hospital. I think it was near Astoria. The first floor was gone. I saw nurses on the second floor looking out the windows. They were holding on to each other. One of them was a woman about my age. She had a stethoscope around her neck. She was just standing there, her hand over her mouth. I knew that look. It's the look you get when the ER doors open and you realize you have 20 patients and only 2 beds. It's the moment you realize the system has failed. Look at Alaska, he told me. I felt the shift. It was like a camera lens zooming out and then snapping back in on the Aleutians. The scale was different there. Remote, isolated. I saw a fishing village, tiny houses against the backdrop of those massive gray mountains. The wave hit them too. But it was what happened after that got to me. I saw the survivors, people who had been up on the higher ground. They didn't wait for the Coast Guard. They didn't wait for a signal. I saw a man in a heavy flannel shirt pulling people out of the mud with his bare hands. He didn't have a med kit. He didn't have a radio. He just had a shovel and this look on his face, this fierce, stubborn refusal to let the ocean win. I saw him wrap a little boy in his own jacket. The kid was shaking so hard his teeth were clicking. The man just held him. They're alone, I thought. Nobody can get to them for days. They aren't alone, Jesus said. He wasn't looking at the destruction. He was looking at the man in the flannel shirt. I felt this weird tightening in my throat. I've spent my career thinking that I'm the one who saves people because I have the degree and the equipment. But that guy, he was saving people because he was there. Suddenly, the vision fractured. I was back in the red pulse, back in the sickness. I saw New York again. It had been a month since the wave, or maybe it was before. The time didn't make sense, but the sickness was worse. I saw a subway car in Manhattan. It was empty except for one man. He was lying on the floor. He wasn't moving. He was doing that shallow, rapid breathing, what we call tachypnea. I could see the muscles in his neck straining. I wanted to reach for his pulse. I wanted to check his capillary refill. "Daniel," Jesus spoke, and his voice felt like a thumb pressing against my forehead. "What do you see?" "Respiratory failure," I said. My voice sounded thin. "Acute respiratory distress syndrome. It looks like a cytokine storm. The immune system is overreacting and flooding the lungs with fluid." I was trying to be the doctor. I was trying to hold on to the science because if I didn't, I'd have to feel what was happening. "Look deeper," he said. I looked at the man's face. He wasn't just sick. He was lonely. That's a weird thing to say about a medical vision, but he looked like he'd been forgotten. I saw a woman in an apartment in Queens. She was sitting by the window. She had a Bible in her lap, but she wasn't reading it. She was just looking at the street. She was sick too. I could see the way her hand was shaking as she tried to turn a page. Then I saw her neighbor, a guy who looked like he'd never stepped foot in a church in his life. He was at her door. He had a bowl of soup and a bottle of Gatorade. He was wearing a mask, a cheap blue one, and he was terrified. You could see it in his eyes. He thought he was going to die if he stayed there. But he knocked. She opened the door, just a crack. I watched him hand her the bowl. He didn't say anything. He just nodded and walked back to his apartment. I looked at Jesus. I was confused. "The sickness is killing them. Why are you showing me a bowl of soup?" "The sickness isn't the point, Daniel," he said. I felt a surge of frustration. "Then what is? People are dying. Their lungs are failing. I've spent my life trying to stop that, and you're telling me it's not the point." I was shouting now, or thinking shouting. I felt that heat in my chest again, the one I feel when a patient codes and we can't get them back. That feeling of being useless. He didn't get angry, he didn't even flinch. "The point is what they do when the air is thin," he said. I took a breath. A real one. I felt the air hit the bottom of my lungs. It felt like needles. I looked back at Florida. The red pulse was hitting the hospitals there like a tidal wave. I saw my own face, or people who looked like me, exhausted, angry, snapping at the nurses. I saw a doctor in Miami. He was sitting in the break room with his head in his hands. He just lost 3 patients in an hour. He was 33, maybe 34, just like me. I watched him stand up. He went to the sink and splashed cold water on his face. Then he went back out. He walked up to a woman whose husband had just died. He didn't give her a clinical explanation. He didn't talk about respiratory arrest. He just sat down on the floor next to her chair. He put his hand on her knee. I felt a physical pain in my sternum watching that. "I never did that," I whispered. "I always had another patient. I always had to get to the next chart." "You were busy," Jesus said. It wasn't a compliment. It was an observation. I saw the light again, the small lights. The nurse in New York, the guy in Alaska, the doctor in Miami. They weren't stopping the disaster. They couldn't, but they were changing the shape of it. I looked at the map again. The red was still there. It was darker now, and the smoke was starting. I saw the first plumes rising from the Sierra Nevada. Not just a fire, a wall of heat that looked like it was coming from the center of the earth. I looked at my hands again. This time I could see them. They were pale. I could see the blue veins under the skin. I gripped the edge of what felt like a railing. It was cold. I looked at Jesus. How much more? "The fire is coming," he said. He didn't look sad. He looked focused, like a surgeon at the start of a 10-hour case. I felt the temperature start to rise. The air in Oregon was gone. The water was gone. And now the sky was starting to turn a color I've never seen in Chicago. A bruised, sick orange. I reached into my pocket. My thumb brushed against something, a reflex hammer. I could feel the rubber head, the cold metal handle. I didn't know how it got there. I pulled it out and looked at it. It looked ridiculous. A toy. "You won't need that," Jesus said. I didn't drop it. I held onto it until my knuckles went white. I looked up, and the sun was gone. The smoke was here. The sky didn't turn black. It turned this heavy, bruised copper, like the color of an old penny you find in the street. I was looking at the horizon over the Sierras, and it wasn't a line anymore. It was a wall of heat that looked like it was vibrating. I'm a doctor, right? I know what happens to the human body when the air quality index hits 500. I know what PM 2.5 particulates do to the alveoli. They don't just sit there. They cross into the bloodstream. They cause systemic inflammation. I was watching the smoke move and I was trying to calculate the mortality rate in my head. I was thinking about the ventilators. How many does Chicago have? How many does Denver have? Stop counting, Daniel, Jesus said. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. I was staring at a forest in Northern California that was just erasing. The trees didn't just burn, they seemed to vanish into the orange haze. I have to count, I said. My voice sounded like I'd been swallowing sand. If I don't count, it's just chaos. I need to know the numbers. I need to know the capacity. I felt his hand on my shoulder. It wasn't a heavy weight, but it was firm, like a lead apron you wear in the X-ray suite. The capacity isn't found in the machines, he said. I shook my head. I don't know what that means. I'm an ER doc. If I don't have a vent, the patient dies. That's the reality. That's the physics of it. I was getting angry again. This wasn't a vision anymore. It felt like an insult to my training. I'd spent 33 years learning how to save lives with science, and here he was telling me to stop counting. Look at the smoke, he told me. I looked. It was moving east now. I watched it roll over the Rockies like a slow, toxic tide. It hit the plains. I saw Kansas. I saw Missouri. I saw the sky in Chicago, my sky, turn that same sick metallic orange. I saw people in the West Loop, people I probably know, people who work in the Loop. They were wearing masks, N95s, but they were still coughing. I could see the way their eyes were watering. Then I saw the hospitals. It was the red pulse all over again. The sickness hadn't even finished, and now the air was trying to kill them too. I saw the ER doors at my own hospital. They were jammed. People were sitting on the sidewalk in the orange light, holding nebulizers that weren't plugged into anything. This is a failure, I whispered. I felt like I was choking. This is just a total systemic collapse. Is it? He asked. He moved in front of me. I couldn't avoid his eyes now. They were the same color as the light, deep, burning, but not with fire, with something else. Look at the trees, Daniel. After the fire. He didn't wait for me to agree. The vision snapped forward. The smoke was still there, but the fire had passed through a section of the forest. Everything was black. The soil looked like ash. I've seen burns. I've worked the burn unit. I know what dead tissue looks like. This looked like the whole earth was dead tissue. There's nothing left, I said. Look at the ground, he said. I leaned down. I didn't want to. I expected to smell charred wood and death. Instead, I smelled rain. Even though the sky was orange and dry, I saw a seed. It was tiny, trapped in a crack in the blackened soil, and it was opening. I'm a man of medicine. I don't do metaphors, but I watched this green shoot push through the ash. It was moving fast, like a time-lapse video. The fire isn't the end, he said. I looked at the blackened forest. But everything that was there is gone. The old growth, the shade, it took 100 years to grow that. It was full of deadwood, Daniel, he said. His voice didn't have any judgment in it. It was just factual. Like a surgeon explaining why they had to debride a wound. The deadwood was blocking the light, he continued. It was using the water that the new things needed. It had to go. I looked at him, and I felt this cold shiver go down my spine. I thought about Chicago. I thought about the way we live, the rush, the arrogance, the way I'd treated my residents, the way I'd treated my wife before the papers were signed. I was the deadwood. I didn't say it. I didn't have to. It's not a punishment, he said. I didn't believe him. How is this not a punishment? Look at the cities. Look at the people who can't breathe. He took my hand again. His skin was warm, too warm. If a man is walking toward a cliff in the dark and you scream at him to stop, is that a punishment? I didn't answer. If he falls and breaks his leg and you have to set the bone so he can walk again, is that a punishment? I looked away. I saw the orange light reflecting off the reflex hammer I was still clutching. It looked like it was glowing. The world is in the dark, Daniel, he said, and they're walking fast. I saw a vision of a church then, not a big cathedral, a small, boring-looking building in a suburb. It was packed. There were people sitting on the floor. There were people standing in the aisles. They weren't there for a show. They weren't there because they were excited. They looked like I did when I found out the aneurysm had blown. They looked like people who had realized they weren't in control. I saw an old man, a guy who looked like he'd spent 40 years in a factory. He was crying, not a loud, dramatic sob, just tears running down his face. He was holding the hand of the person next to him, A stranger, a younger guy with a tattoo on his neck. They were praying. I felt this weird, uncomfortable heat in my own throat. They only look up when the ground shakes, Jesus said. I felt a surge of resistance. That's manipulative. You're saying you have to break the world to get them to talk to you? He didn't pull away. He leaned in closer. I'm not breaking it, Daniel. It was already broken. I'm just letting them see the cracks. I looked back at the smoke. It was moving over the Atlantic now. The whole country was covered in this coppery veil. Where is the safe place? I asked. I felt desperate. You showed me the sickness, the wave, the fire. Where do we go? I'm a doctor. I need to give people a plan. I need to give them a directive. He smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a father who knows his son is about to go through something hard. There are 3 places, he said. I reached for a pen. I didn't have a pen. I just gripped the hammer tighter. The home, he said. I thought about my apartment in Chicago. Empty, cold, coffee pods on the counter. The church, he said. I haven't been in a church since I was 10. And the shelter, he said. A government shelter? I asked. I felt a spike of skepticism. People won't trust that. My patients, they don't trust the system. They think the government is trying to track them, or worse. They will need to trust, he said, because I will be there. I didn't understand. In the shelters, in the hands of the people who are helping, he said, in the silence between the sirens, I will be there. The vision started to blur. The orange light began to pulse. And for a second, I felt the coldness of the linoleum floor again. I felt the weight of my own body. I felt the blood in my head. I have to go back, I said. I was panicking. I have to tell them. I have to warn the ER staff. We need to stockpile O2. We need to. Daniel, he said. His voice stopped me. It was like a physical barrier. Tell them I love them, he said. I stared at him. That's it? People are dying in the waves and the smoke, and you want me to tell them you love them? That's not a medical plan. That's not a warning. It's the only thing that won't burn, he said. Then he let go of my hand. The orange sky didn't fade, it shattered. I felt like I was falling through a sheet of glass. I could smell it. That's the thing that's been happening for the last 9 days. I'm sitting in my living room in Chicago, the windows are closed, the AC is on, but I can smell the smoke. It's not wood smoke, it's that metallic, coppery scent from the vision. It's in my clothes. It's in the rug. I wake up in the middle of the night and my lungs feel heavy, like they're full of that orange light. I try to tell myself it's just the recovery. Daniel, you had a brain bleed. Your olfactory bulb is irritated. It's just a neurological glitch. But then I look at my hands. They're still warm, and I can't stop looking at the sky. Every time a cloud moves over the sun, I wait. I wait for the orange to start. I'm 33 years old. I'm one of the best trauma docs in this city. And I'm terrified to take a deep breath. Jesus was still holding my hand, but the light was getting thinner, like a screen losing power. I could feel the cold starting to creep back into my feet, the literal cold of the hospital floor I'd fallen on. The 3 places, Daniel, he said. Remember them. I tried to focus. I was thinking like a disaster coordinator. Okay. The home. You said go home. Seal it. But what if the home is in the path of the wave? What if the fire is at the door? I was looking for the flaw. I always look for the flaw in the plan. The home is where the family is, he said. I thought about my apartment in the West Loop. It's got floor-to-ceiling windows and a designer sofa I bought to impress people who never came over. It's not a home. It's a box. I saw families, he continued. In the middle of the sickness, in the middle of the smoke, they were inside. They weren't looking at their screens. They were looking at each other. I had a flash of a memory. My ex-wife, 3 years ago. We were sitting at the same table, both on our phones, answering emails from the hospital. We hadn't spoken for an hour. They were rediscovering the people they lived with, Jesus said. I felt a sharp, stabbing pain in my chest. It wasn't the aneurysm. It was, I don't know, a realization. The disaster was forcing them to actually be a family. And the church? I asked. I felt a surge of resistance. A lot of people think churches are they think it's a scam or it's for people who can't handle the real world. He didn't defend the institution. He didn't give me a lecture on theology. They are houses of prayer, Daniel. When the ground is moving, even the man who says he hates me will find a place to kneel. I saw the images again, the crowded pews, the people who looked like they just crawled out of a wreck. They weren't there for a sermon. They were there because the silence of the church was the only place they couldn't hear the sirens. And the shelter, I said. This is the one I don't get. Why would you send people to a government shelter? It's going to be chaos. It's going to be a logistical nightmare. I was thinking about the Superdome during Katrina. The smell, the lack of supplies, the fear. Because my people will be the light there, he said. I watched a vision of a high school gymnasium. It was full of cots. People were crying, some were screaming. I saw a woman in a green jacket, one of the volunteers. She wasn't doing anything miraculous. She was just sitting with an elderly man who'd lost his glasses. She was reading the back of a soup can to him because he was hungry and couldn't see. She's the shelter, Jesus said. I looked at him. I was trying to memorize his face before the light gave out. You're saying the safety isn't in the building, it's in the people who aren't afraid. The buildings will fall, Daniel. The wave will take the roads, the smoke will fill the rooms, but the light. He stopped. He looked out over the map one last time. I saw a final image. It was the Oregon coast again. The debris was everywhere. Chunks of houses, mud, twisted metal. I saw a little girl, maybe 6. She was sitting on a piece of a roof that had washed up on a hill. She was holding a stuffed animal that was soaked with salt water. She wasn't crying. She was just staring at the space where the ocean used to be, and beside her sat a man. He wasn't a doctor. He wasn't a soldier. He was just a guy in a dirty t-shirt. He didn't say a word. He just sat there. He put his arm around her, and he didn't look away. That's it, I whispered. That's you. That's who I'm calling you to be, Jesus said. Then he pushed me. It wasn't a gentle nudge, it was a shove. I felt myself lurch backward, and the light didn't just fade, it exploded into a million gray needles. I felt the tube first. That's the worst sensation in medicine. Having an endotracheal tube shoved down your throat while you're coming around, it's a violent gagging reflex. I tried to reach for it, but my hands were tied. Soft restraints. I heard the monitor. Beep, beep, beep. It was the most annoying sound I'd ever heard. It was too fast. My heart was racing. He's back, someone said. It was Sarah. I recognized her voice from the ER. She sounded like she'd been running. I opened my eyes. The ceiling was white. The light was fluorescent, harsh, and it smelled like bleach. I tried to talk. I just gagged on the plastic. Easy, Daniel, a voice said. It was Dr. Miller, the head of neurosurgery. He was leaning over me. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. You had a massive bleed, subarachnoid. We had to go in and clip it. You were gone for 11 minutes, man. 11 minutes. I wanted to laugh, but I couldn't. I'd seen 2 months of sickness. I'd seen a wave take 4 states. I'd seen the sky turn orange for years, and Miller was telling me it was 11 minutes. We almost lost you 3 times, Sarah was saying. She was holding my hand. I looked at her. Her hand was cold. It felt like paper. I closed my eyes and I could still see the little girl on the roof. I could still smell the copper in the air. That was 9 days ago. I'm out of the ICU now. I'm in a regular room staring at the Chicago skyline. It's a beautiful day. Blue sky, no smoke. The physical therapists come in and ask me to squeeze their hands. They check my pupils. They ask me if I know what year it is. 2026, I say. But I'm lying. In my head, I'm waiting for the calendar to hit May. I'm waiting for the red pulse. I've started looking at the other patients in the ward. Not as a doctor, I'm not looking at their charts anymore. I'm looking at their eyes. I'm looking for the deadwood. Last night, a nurse came in to change my IV. She looked exhausted. She was moving like a machine. I reached out and touched her arm. "Are you okay?" I asked. She stopped. She looked at me like I'd just spoken in a different language. Most doctors don't ask nurses if they're okay, especially not the ones who just had brain surgery. "I'm fine," she said. "You look tired," I said. She stood there for a second, holding the saline bag. Then her shoulders dropped. Just an inch. "It's been a long shift," she whispered. I didn't give her a clinical lecture. I didn't tell her to go get some caffeine. I just held her hand for a second. "Thank you," I said. She looked at me, and for a split second, the room felt different. The bleach smell was gone. For one heartbeat, I smelled the rain. I know what the neurological textbooks say. I know about post-perfusion syndrome. I know about hallucinatory residues from brain trauma. I tell myself every morning that This was just a massive surge of neurotransmitters in a dying brain. But then I look at my reflex hammer. It's sitting on the bedside table. It's just a piece of metal and rubber. But when I pick it up, it's cold. And the air in this room, it's too thin. I'm 33 years old, I'm a doctor, and I'm just waiting for the first person to start coughing. 11 minutes. The hospital digital clock recorded the flatline at 2:15 p.m. and the first sinus rhythm return at 2:26 p.m. In the medical world, that's an eternity. Most people who come back after 11 minutes don't come back whole. They don't come back with their vocabulary intact. But Daniel didn't just come back. He came back with a discrepancy. According to the staff at that Chicago hospital, Daniel has become obsessed with the clocks in his room. He doesn't watch the hours, he watches the seconds. He's been seen timing the interval between his own breaths. He told one of the night nurses that the time on the wall is wrong. Not that the clock is broken, but that the scale is off. Like he's trying to map a decade's worth of memory onto a few minutes of clinical death. He still hasn't returned to the ER. His hands are steady, his scans are clear, but he won't go back into a trauma bay. Instead, he spends his afternoon sitting by the window looking east toward the lake. He's waiting for a color that isn't in the Chicago forecast. He's waiting for the penny-colored sky to show up over Lake Michigan.